everyone, I'm Claire, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing a haul of some Lurid Lacquer and Mooncat polishes that I got not all that recently at this point. I got the Mooncats in December from the Avatar collab, and then most of the Lurids are from October, though there are also a couple that I picked up in March. I just haven't gotten around to showing all of them since other videos have been more time sensitive and I've been kind of busy. But I'll be showing my swatches so you can see how these apply and sharing my thoughts on them. So let's get into it. I'll start with the Lurids. They're a mix of some older polishes, their fall release, one from Polish Pickup, and a couple from their February releases and restocks. And when I was scripting this video, I realized that I mentioned 3 of these in the video where I was talking about my year in nail polish. They made it into my top favorites of what I tried in 2025. But I'll start with the one that wasn't on that list but is still very good, Indomitable. It's apparently from the Thistle and Thorns collection, though that came out before I knew about Lurid, but I feel like it's one of their more popular polishes, which is why they still restock it. It's described as having a violet-leaning purple base with vibrant purple to pink to red shimmer, and I think that's pretty accurate. It's super purple. When it comes to the application, I didn't have any issues. It's definitely a polish that starts out sheer and builds up, which is pretty common for shimmers. So it doesn't look very impressive in that first coat, but after that, the color really starts to build up. I would say if you don't have too much free edge, you might be happy with 2 coats, but I could definitely still see my nail line at that point, so I went in with a third, and that brought me to where I was happy with the coverage. Not 100% opaque in all lighting, but opaque enough for me. I will say that you can kind of see some brush strokes in the shimmer, nothing too major, but you might want to be careful on that final coat. And if the tip of my nail looks weird, I think one of the bristles from my top coat brush came off and got stuck. So add that to the list of complaints about the cheap top coat I got for swatching. It also sometimes causes some weird wrinkling as it dries. But back to the polish, I'm pretty happy with Indomitable. I got it because I was interested in how vibrant it is. I didn't have any other purple shimmers like this. So it was great to wear for spooky season with a bright orange and a neon green. Also, at some point, I kind of want to make a video where I match polishes with different professional wrestlers, and I feel like this one would be perfect for Rhea Ripley. I will note that you don't see that super vibrant purple in all lighting. Sometimes there's more of a red shift in the shimmer, and that makes the color a bit more complex, but still a good polish. Then we've got Sunshine on the Waves, which I think came out last summer. It has a clear base with blue reflective glitter and orange to gold iridescent flakes. Now, you might think that a polish with a clear base would be a topper, but this one is so packed with glitter that it has really good coverage. Like in that first coat, yeah, there's still a lot of nail line, but my nail is covered. There aren't any significant bare patches. And with 2 coats, there's enough of that reflective glitter that it kind of looks like the polish just has a blue base. When I actually wore this polish, I felt like 2 coats was enough coverage, but I did do a third when I was swatching just to see, and that did mask the nail line a little bit more. You can still see nail line in some lighting because there's no base color to make it actually opaque, but it's not any less coverage than some jelly-based polishes. So I am very impressed with this formula. Lurid does a lot of polishes with reflective glitter and flakes in a clear base, and I was kind of hesitant to try one at first because I thought they'd be too sheer for me, and that it would be kind of obvious that there's no base color, and I would miss having a tinted jelly base to bring everything together. But because reflective glitters are so tiny, when you put enough of them close together, it looks more like an overall wash of color than individual particles. So I think this is a stunning polish. It has so much sparkle, good coverage, more color payoff than I expected, and I really enjoy the color combo. When I ordered, I was kind of choosing between this and a similar polish with pink flakes, but I realized I already have a few polishes that are blue with pink, so Sunshine on the Waves is more unique to my collection, and I really like it. Next is Death Threatens and Creeps and Lurches from their fall collection, which I think was called 2 Crones at the End of the World. If I remember right, that collection had a lot of red and purple, but this polish has a black and blue jelly base, orangey gold to green shimmer, and brown reflective glitter. In my first thin coat, you can definitely see that blue color, but as the description notes, once it's built up, it looks closer to black. I did stop at 2 coats with this polish because the base is pigmented enough that it was close to opaque at that point. And when it comes to reflective glitters, I try to avoid a 3rd coat when I can, just because they can end up looking kind of thick on the nail, and one less coat makes the removal process a little easier. So I appreciate that this polish is one where I think most people will be good with 2 coats. And I really love how it looks, especially the shimmer. With the dark base, it does look a little more subtle in some lighting. It's just kind of this murky brownish green color. But when you catch it at the right angle, or especially when I wore it and went out in the sun, that shimmer actually has a very vibrant green shift, which is a fun surprise. So I would definitely recommend it if you like dark polish, but enjoy a little color too. Then we've got another dark but still colorful polish, my favorite Spooky Bitch's favorite Spooky Bitch. I'm not sure when this one first came out, but I do remember at some point last year that I tried to buy it, but it went out of stock as I was checking out, which was very sad, but luckily they restocked it alongside their fall collection and I was able to get it then. It has a deep maroon base with iridescent microflakes that shift from green to blue to purple. And the formula is pretty nice. Definitely more sheer than the previous polish, even though it's also pretty dark. And I feel like I was seeing a little unevenness in certain lighting, though it's not picking up on camera too much. I think it's just that it's more sheer than you would expect for the color, and brighter lighting kind of exposes that. But overall, I'm happy with the amount of coverage I got in 3 coats, and I like that the base doesn't get so dark that it's hard to tell what color it is. To be honest, I was first interested in this polish because of the name, I love the reference, and I was like, the color combo seems interesting, we'll see how I actually feel about it. And I ended up really loving it. In direct light, you do have that maroon-green combo, which is fun, but in other lighting, the shimmer goes blue, which makes the base lean more purple, so then you have a totally different color combo. And there are times that I get kind of annoyed at shifty shimmers because I don't like all the shifts, but luckily with this one, I think it's always pretty. I also want to mention, I feel like with a lot of the website photos, the shimmer looks pretty subtle, like it only shows up right where the light is hitting it. But in person, I was seeing the shimmer a lot more. Studio lighting doesn't really do it any favors apparently, but in more common, average lighting, it's pretty glowy. So those are the 4 polishes from my fall order, and next up is one that I got from Polish Pickup, which if you don't know is a monthly limited edition pre-order event where a bunch of different brands make a polish that fits a certain theme. If I remember right, the October theme was optical illusions, and Lurid made a polish called Autumnal Illusion, I think based on butterflies blending in with leaves. It features a warm yellow base with red-orange shimmer and pink reflective glitter. So basically the same finish as Death Threatens and Creeps and Lurches, just a very different color. And not surprisingly, the yellow is not as opaque. The first coat had pretty even coverage and a good amount of color payoff, but there was definitely still visible nail line. So I did a second coat, and I think you could stop there if you want. Coverage is even enough, but still a little sheer. So I ended up doing a 3rd coat, and that got it to where it looked pretty opaque in most lighting. I really like this polish. I'm always on the lookout for more yellows, especially rich, warm yellows like this, but it's not a popular color, so we don't see a lot of them, and especially not creative ones with less common color pairings. Like, we see yellow get paired with green shimmer or orange shimmer, but the pink reflective glitter is a little more unexpected. It's not always super visible depending on the lighting, but when it gets hit with direct light, it's really fun. So I'm glad I picked this one up. The reflective glitter and shimmer combo is one of my favorite finishes from Lurid, and I just love seeing the range of what they can do with it. There's the really dark version you saw before. I have their polish Frost on the Window Panes, that's the more delicate neutral version. Autumnal Illusion is really bold and bright, and you're about to see a couple more variations. Okay, so the last 2 Lurids are from an order I placed at the end of February when they did some restocks and new releases. First is Edge Crush Test, which is their 2nd anniversary polish, and it's another example of a jelly base with shimmer and reflective glitter, but I actually ended up not liking it as much as the others. It has a very sheer purple base with pink to gold shimmer and brown reflective glitter, though the description notes that on the nail it mostly looks like a sparkly pink with a grayish base. I didn't have any issues with the formula. It went on very smoothly and evenly, built up over 3 coats, but it never really got opaque. It's intended to be a fairly sheer polish. So that's not a problem, but what I didn't enjoy as much is the visual texture. If you're familiar with reflective glitters, you know they have a physical texture. They feel sandy when they dry down, and you can see that the polish isn't smooth. But when you add a couple layers of top coat, it takes away that grittiness and mostly takes care of the textured appearance too. But with this polish, even once I added top coat, it still looked like it had that reflective glitter texture. My theory is that it's because the glitters are darker than the base, so they're more visible than usual, but I'm not totally sure. So that was slightly disappointing. I'm also not in love with the color, but I kind of knew that going in. I didn't buy this polish because I saw it and thought it was gorgeous. I bought it because I have Lurid's first anniversary polish, and I thought it would be fun to have the second one too. And also, there was really only one other polish I was wanting to get, and sometimes I don't want to pay shipping for just one polish, so I added this one to my cart. And when it arrived and I looked at it in the bottle, I was like, oh, this is actually really pretty. Seeing like a green and an aqua shift. Not sure how much I can actually get it to show up for you, but I am seeing it in person. It looks like a fairy wing, but like the description said, you're not always going to see that on the nail. It's mostly pink. So yeah, it's not a bad polish, but it's not my favorite. Maybe I can try using it as a topper and see if that's any better. And last from Lurid, we've got Leather and Lignin, which is another example of the shimmer plus reflective finish, and luckily one that I really like. It has a medium purple base with copper to gold shimmer and bronze reflective glitter. I was having lighting issues, so the first coat is not in focus, but hopefully you can see that it went on fairly evenly, though there might be a little bit of patchiness. But I blame that on the fact that I did a pretty thin coat. It definitely evened out once I built it up. I would say that the level of coverage is similar to Autumnal Illusion, where the color payoff was good from the start, but it didn't really look opaque until the third coat. Though, if I remember right, I was able to get away with 2 coats when I actually wore this one. Like I said before, that does tend to be my goal with reflective glitters. And as you might know, I love a purple base with warm toned shimmer. I have a lot of versions of it, and this one does stand out against the others. It's that warm, medium purple, and then the shimmer I think is technically iridescent, but it's a golden copper color, so it looks more metallic, and the reflective glitter brings in more sparkle and dimension. This polish also really transforms in different lighting. In direct light, you see more of the base because the shimmer gets concentrated in the middle, but in lower lighting, the shimmer looks more dispersed and you don't really see the base, so it makes it look overall more copper. And I enjoy it both ways, so another one that I'm happy I picked up. So those are all the Lurid polishes I have to show you. Most of them were that reflective glitter shimmer combo that I really enjoy. There was just one that I didn't like quite as much, but the others were all pretty good, so I'm happy with that. Moving on, I have 3 Mooncat polishes to show you. They're all green. 2 of them are from the collab with Avatar the Last Airbender, and if you want to know more about my thoughts about that collection and the inspiration behind the polishes, I did talk about that in my Mooncat year in review video, so I probably won't get into it too much here. And I'm actually going to start with Highway Glow, which is a light green cream that I got with rewards points. That's the only way I've gotten Mooncat creams because they are expensive. And based on the first swatch photo on the website, I thought it was going to be a bit more yellowy, a bit more chartreuse, kind of like the green in Mooncat's branding, but it's actually just a very bright light green. And the formula was pretty good. In my limited experience with Mooncat creams, I would say that they're not quite as thick as Holo Taco creams, but they do have very good coverage and opacity. And this one does self-level very well. I do have a ridge in the middle of my nail, so you can see that, but otherwise it evened itself out. When it comes to number of coats, I did do 3, because in 2 coats it was at the point where it looked opaque in most lighting, but if I held my nail up to the window, I could see through my free edge. Not too surprising for such a light color. So I did a 3rd coat, which made it more opaque, but when I actually wore this polish, I just did 2 coats, so you could definitely get away with that on shorter nails, or if you're just not worried about it being fully opaque. Not that you're gonna go out and buy this polish, it's been discontinued, but just in case you come across it in a D-stash or something. But only get it if it's a reasonable price. People overcharge for discontinued Mooncats. They are not worth that much. Overall, I do enjoy having it in my collection. It's my 4th green cream out of the 14 total creams I have, and it's not my absolute favorite shade of green, but it's still good. I would not have paid full price for it, but it was a good use of rewards points. So that brings us to my Cabbages. I wish I had some Cabbages to pull out for the visual gag, but I just have the polish, which has a sheer green jelly base and iridescent flakes that shift from yellow to green to teal. I'm sure that base is doing something, but it's really the flakes that are the star of the show. There's a lot in there. It doesn't look that impressive on the first coat since that base is so sheer and the flakes aren't built up yet, but it was nice even coverage, and then the next coat built up the coverage quite a bit, though in this swatch it did need the third to really build up the flakes. Though if I remember right, when I wore this polish and painted it on my right hand, which has shorter nails, it was pretty good in 2 coats, so a 2 to 3 coater depending. And I really like this polish. It's so shiny it almost seems metallic, but it has the color shiftiness of an iridescent polish. It's so vibrant, so leafy. I would have been tempted by this polish regardless because of the name and the inspiration, but it's also a finish and color I really enjoy. I don't always want a green this bright, you know I love a swampy green, but sometimes I do want something super in your face and colorful. I also want Mooncat to make more polishes like this. I think they make some really nice flakies, but not enough of them lately. Luckily, this one is still available. The Avatar collection is still in stock as of filming, since Mooncat does do restocks of their limited edition polishes, so they can keep them around for a few months. And last is Tales of Ba Sing Se, a magnetic polish. It has a dark green base with orangey yellow to green to teal multi-chrome magnetic shimmer. I'm showing the first couple coats unmagnetized, and then I'll bring in the horseshoe magnet for the velvet style, and then show how it looks in the cat eye state. It has a nice formula, maybe a tiny bit of unevenness in that first coat, but it mostly leveled out and had a good amount of coverage. And then it wasn't fully opaque in the second coat, but I would say coverage was good enough that I could stop there if I wanted to wear it unmagnetized. And I do like how it looks that way. It's basically a nice green gold shimmer. But of course, it's also very fun in the velvet style, which separates the shimmer from the base. So depending on the angle, you either see that dark base or the really dimensional shimmer, and it looks very glassy. And it was mostly opaque in those 3 coats. I would say a lot of people would probably be good in 2 with the velvet style because the base is very pigmented, but I have a lot of free edge and kind of did thin coats, so the 3rd coat helps. And I also needed 3 coats in the cat eye style, which is not surprising since that tends to be less opaque with all magnetic polishes. Some of the pigment is pulled into one spot instead of being distributed across the nail. So you can see that there is some visible nail line in certain lighting with my swatch, but I did do fairly thin coats, and I think I was able to get it fully opaque when I actually wore it. And I do enjoy this polish. I would say for more simple magnetics like this, where there are no additional elements beyond the base and the magnetic, I do think the velvet state looks a little better, but it is nice both ways. It magnetized well. And I enjoy the color, I like warm greens, and I love how the base pairs with that yellowy shimmer. I could do without the shift to a cooler green, but for the most part, it's a color range I like a lot. And if you're wondering how this compares to Holo Taco's No Smoking, which is another warm green with a multi-chrome magnetic shimmer, I did do a side-by-side comparison in my review of the Haute Garbage collection. But the short version is that Tales of Ba Sing Se is more opaque and just generally brighter than No Smoking. Like, I kind of thought of Tales of Ba Sing Se as a swampy green, what some people might consider a prugly, but No Smoking is so much murkier. On paper, they're similar, but different vibes for sure. So yeah, those are all the polishes I wanted to show you today. Like I said, I have had them for a bit. These are not new polishes, but the upside with that is that it means I've had the chance to wear them all, so I can give a more complete review. Just doing a swatch on my thumb will give me a basic idea of how a polish performs, but for one thing, it almost always ends up on the more sheer end of what's possible with a given polish. And also, only having a polish on for a few minutes means I'm not going to see how it looks in as many lighting situations. But with these, I was able to see how they perform in typical use, and for the most part, I really enjoyed them. Always happy to add more greens and reflective glitters to my collection. But yeah, I think that's all I have for you today. Thank you to everyone who's watching till the end. Let me know in the comments what you think about the polishes I showed today, if you have a favorite, if you've tried any of them, and if you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you would leave me a like or maybe even subscribe. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed, and I'll see you next time. Bye!